8 on your side, your local election headquarters. This is Battleground Florida, Sunday edition.
Good morning, I'm Donovan. Welcome to Battleground Florida. We have a special show for you today. We're going to walk you through some of the most important moments of this week's trial over the ban on mask mandates in Florida. It's dozens of hours condensed into 20 minutes, so you won't see everything. But if you're so interested, I live tweeted the entire trial for you to get a fuller understanding. The trial took place over Zoom starting on Monday. Pretty much everyone you see in this Zoom is an attorney, except for Second Judicial Circuit Judge John Cooper, the court reporter, and whoever is testifying at any given time. The plaintiffs in this case are several Florida families, including 2 from Tampa. They're suing Governor Ron DeSantis, Education Commissioner Richard Corcoran, the Florida Department of Education, and the Board of Education. They alleged 6 counts in their complaint. Count 1, that they have a state constitutional right to send their kids to safe, secure public schools. Count 2, that school districts have a right to govern themselves. In count 3, they allege the governor acted in an arbitrary and capricious manner with no rational basis in issuing his executive order. Count 4 alleges the governor's executive order exceeded the Department of Education's authority in public health matters. Count 5 alleges the Department of Health violates the right to safe schools. And count 6 is a request for emergency injunctive relief to put the decision back in the hands of school districts. Both sides began with their opening statements.
We look first to Article 9, Section 4B of the Florida Constitution, which provides that the local school boards shall operate, control, and supervise all free public schools within a school district. It doesn't say the school boards have that duty unless the governor wants to. Of course, private schools are not subject to the governor's executive order. Private schools can mandate masks, but public schools cannot. But our children in our public schools are just as precious as those in private schools.
Your Honor, there's 67 school districts in Florida. Last year, 40 of them had mask mandates. 27 of them did not have mask mandates. And the state asked school districts to report COVID cases. And then the state compiled the data. And based on the actual data, the difference in the number of COVID cases between school districts with mask mandates and school districts without mask mandates was less than 0.5%.
Next, it was time for the plaintiffs to call their first witness, Dr. Thomas Unash, a vector-borne disease specialist who oversees COVID research at USF. He testified that the Delta variant produces 1,000 times more virus than the original COVID strain, and that not only is it more contagious, it's more dangerous.
What that is telling us is that the mortality rate here that we are seeing at 0.2%, which is what's pretty much been holding up, means that this infection among children is about twice as, leads to a mortality rate that's about twice what the normal seasonal flu is among the under 16 age cohort. Everything that I'm seeing in being reported moving forward so far is that this Delta variant does seem to be a more pathogenic variant than what we've seen up until this point in all age cohorts, and also parenthetically in people who have been vaccinated.
And more pathogenic, can you explain what that means?
More hospitalizations, more deaths, more severe illness.
Dr. Unash then testified that masks work, but admitted there is some debate when it comes to children.
Masks are shown to reduce a double cloth mask about 75 to 80% of the aerosol particles that are produced by an individual. Up to N95 masks were reduced 95 to 99%. So you are going to be dramatically reducing the viral loads when you're wearing masks, no matter what the virus variant is out there.
And would you concede that the data in the studies are inconclusive as to the efficacy of masks preventing the transmission of COVID-19 in children?
In children? Yes, I would say that that's probably correct.
Then the moms who sued the governor testified.
Why is leaving the choice to mask up to individual parents a problem, or is it a problem?
It definitely is a problem. I think when you're looking at parental choice, it's really a false narrative, because when you're putting, especially in this situation, because at some point you're ultimately choosing that one parent's choice matters over another. In this case, if it continues the way it's going, my choice to protect my child will not matter, because the way masks work is that my mask prevents you from getting what I have. And so it really means that it's necessary that all of us are masked. And so by saying that I can't make the decision, by saying that we can't have a mask mandate, you're saying that my choice doesn't matter.
Do you believe that masking itself then is a individual parent issue?
No, it's absolutely a public health issue.
Next up, several doctors testified for the plaintiffs about what they're seeing right now in hospital in kids with COVID.
One of our concerns is the possibility of something called long COVID that we've seen more in adults, but have seen a fair number in some studies show up to, in some studies 10%, sometimes as much as 40 or 50% of children will have long-term symptoms after COVID, even when they've had a mild infection.
Then Dr. Tony Kreisman, a child lung doctor, addressed the Brown study cited by the governor in his executive order and explained why there are no good randomized controlled trials to test the effectiveness of kids and masks.
That study actually states quite clearly, I think it's on the last page, that it should not be used to imply that masks are ineffective. For it to be a truly double-blind study, that would be hard, because you'd have to somehow not let the children know who was wearing masks and who weren't. And you'd also have to potentially put children without masks into infectious situations, so to be ethically challenging and practically challenging.
That was day one. Up next, days 2 and 3 of the trial, the defense presents its witnesses when Battleground Florida continues in a moment. Welcome back to Battleground Florida. On day 2 of this week's trial over the ban on mask mandates in Florida schools, plaintiffs' attorneys finished their questioning and defense presented their top witness, Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, a Stanford professor of medicine and economics with an MD and a PhD. Plaintiffs pointed out that he's not an epidemiologist, calling him a health economist. And he admitted he hasn't treated patients since medical school. But he said in this instance, that's a positive, not a negative.
Doctor, would you agree that given your position in academia, that might permit you more time to thoroughly research and analyze COVID-19 than a doctor that is a pediatrician in a clinic?
Yeah, my full-time job is research.
Doctor, might a professional's opinion be skewed if all they saw every day were sick patients?
That's absolutely true. It's very, very common actually to see to have selection bias in your impressions.
Dr. Bhattacharya then talked about his own studies early in the pandemic, which he says identified 40 times as many infections in parts of California than had been reported.
What that meant was that the disease was considerably more widespread in the early days of the epidemic than public health realized. And it was that paper was published in the Journal of the American Medical Association, which is one of the top medical journals. I mean, I think that's still true. I think that now with so much extensive testing, it's probably every case that's identified, maybe 2 or 3 or 4 are missed. So that's pretty well known. It's called an under-ascertainment problem. It's recognized by the CDC. So the point is that public health measures do not identify the majority of infections, and the infection spreads. This is partly why the lockdowns have been so ineffective in stopping disease spread.
After some overruled objections from plaintiffs, the defense then played video of the governor's last roundtable from 3 days before he issued his executive order. Dr. Bhattacharya in that roundtable discussed what his research shows about kids and masks.
The kids themselves continue not to be, the evidence continues to show that they're not spreaders of the disease in any efficient way. So the masks themselves have a marginal, if any benefit, marginal benefit in slowing the spread of the disease. And of course, masks do actually cause some harm to children developmentally. So I don't think that the calculus has changed at all. It's still the same. I think on net, it's not a good idea to mask children. The key thing to me is hospitalizations and deaths from COVID. Well, we've done an incredible job at decoupling the cases from the deaths. The public focus on cases at this point, I think, only serves to panic people while not actually serving any public health purpose.
Dr. Bhattacharya then talked about his relationship with Governor DeSantis, who called him last year and asked him to participate in those roundtables.
I'll just give you an example from that one conversation in September. He was familiar not just with the abstracts of the scientific papers that I brought up, but both the methods and many of the details of the paper. He had cogent opinions about the strengths and weaknesses of the papers that we discussed, and could place them in good context. I found that many epidemiologists that I've interacted with, and certainly many physicians I've interacted with in this epidemic, are much less capable than the governor at doing that. So, I mean, I came away quite impressed from that conversation.
Then the plaintiff's attorneys cross-examined Dr. Bhattacharya, and it got testy.
And I'm asking you, what's an acceptable death rate in your opinion for children?
I mean, I reject the premise of the question. The question is not what's an acceptable death rate. The question is, what are the trade-offs implicit? So if you, as I said in my, can I finish, please? So as I said in my,
I suppose we would not have this problem.
The right way to do policy is by thinking about the harms versus the benefits, marginal harms versus the marginal benefits. So a policy like masking 5-year-olds will have harms to children. You compare that against the benefits, potentially with such as they are, and then make decisions on that basis.
In that case, what's an unacceptable death rate for children then?
I'm sorry, I still reject the premise of your question. I don't understand I don't understand. There's no number I can give you that would be the right number.
We also heard on day 3 from moms for the defense who were opposed to masks for their kids.
He hated it. He absolutely hated it. He would tell me, "Mommy, I want to go back to school." He goes, "But I don't want to wear a mask." He goes, "I love going into the classroom, doing different things." He said, "But I don't want to wear a mask." So it was horrible. I mean, it turned into, I have to use the word child abuse.
And I spoke with her doctor, who agreed that she had an issue and allowed her to remove her mask in the doctor's office because she could tell she was in distress, and still refused to sign the form.
The final word before closing arguments went to USF Dr. Tony Kreisman as the plaintiff's rebuttal witness, who explained why the decision to mask isn't just a personal one.
The question was, under the state statute, isn't the healthcare decision up to the parent for their minor child, assuming that it's within the law?
If I may, I think that's a philosophical question as well as a legal question. The impact of one's parent decision for their child is not only upon that child, it is on the greater community. It's upon their immunosuppressed teacher, upon their immunosuppressed colleagues. If this were a non-contagious disorder like tetanus, then you could say to a parent, you're free not to get a tetanus shot for your child. But the parent's decision doesn't only have an impact on their own child, it's a global decision. It has an impact on society.
So how much of one's individual liberty is society willing to interfere with, right?
Sir, I believe we could debate that for a long, long time.
Right. And I don't think we have time, but that's, thank you, doctor. You've been very kind.
Up next, the judge's decision when Battleground Florida continues in a moment. Welcome back. After 4 days of testimony and arguments in the trial over the ban on mask mandates in Florida schools, Judge John Cooper sided with the parents suing the governor, saying DeSantis and state agencies acted outside their authority and therefore the executive order and rules directed from it were unlawful. Before issuing his verbal order, Judge John Cooper explained why the law sometimes limits individual rights for the good of society, like how your right to sit at home and get drunk ends at your front door.
The reason is the driver exercising his or her rights to drink is now putting at risk other people. So that driver's right to drive intoxicated is limited by the government.
He also pointed out parents give up many rights already when they send their kids to public schools.
That law is much more an infringement on parents' rights to control the health of their children than a face mask policy.
Cooper found that the plaintiff families who sued Governor Ron DeSantis did not prove the state violated their right to safe schools. But he did find the governor acted in an arbitrary and capricious manner by not following all the provisions of the Parents' Bill of Rights, which ironically is the same law the governor used to justify giving parents the right to make the mask decision.
It doesn't ban mask mandates at all. It doesn't require that a mask mandate must exclude a parental opt-out at all.
The judge's ruling prevents the governor and the Department of Education from doing anything to limit school district mask policies, opening the door for them to issue a policy without fear of repercussion.
The defendant's assertion in this regard is incorrect because the Parents' Bill of Rights does not ban school board face mask mandates. The law expressly permits school boards to adopt policies regarding the health care of students, such as a face mask mandate, even if a parent disagrees with that policy.
The governor's office responded, saying the judge's ruling was, quote, made with incoherent justifications, not based in science or facts, end quote. The judge's order won't go into effect until it's entered in written form, which we expect to happen on Tuesday. Stay with us. A preview of the mayor's race in St. Petersburg. There will be a runoff in November for the next mayor of St. Petersburg. In last week's election, former Pinellas County Commissioner Ken Welch got 39% of the vote on Tuesday. Robert Blackman, a St. Pete City Councilman, got 28%. You see that blue and red in the graphic, but no D or R next to it? That's not entirely an accident. I did that on purpose. Even though it's a nonpartisan race, Ken Welch has made no secret of the fact he's a Democrat. Blackman, the same. He's a Republican. I asked them both how much they think party politics will play a role in this nonpartisan municipal race.
I think we're going to look at the leadership abilities of each person. I've got more elected Republican and Democrat supporters than anyone who was in the race. More Republican supporters than anyone who was in the race. From Sheriff Gualtieri to Ken Burke, the clerk of the court, to the former supervisor of elections. And not from a partisan lens, but because we work together on issues, whether it was bringing a domestic partnership registry to the county or an adult pre-arrest diversion program. There's a lot more than 4,000 people to avoid jail on minor issues like small amounts of marijuana. Work with the sheriff on that. So there are concrete issues that we worked on as partners that are beyond partisanship. That's what you want in a mayor of a large city.
You've made no secret of the fact that you're a Republican. Ken's made no secret of the fact that he's a Democrat. It's technically a nonpartisan race, but how big of an impact do you think that will have in November?
No impact at all to me. So I don't care who you are. You know, I spent the last 2 days calling people, only people who had sent us hate mail via social media, text messages, phone calls. And I reached out and I said, why do you feel that way? Why are you upset? And how can I learn from you and grow with you? It does not matter who you are. And also, it doesn't matter who you voted for in the primary. There's a lot of dang fine public officials. Wengay Newton, Representative Newton, is an idol of mine. Councilwoman Rice is a colleague of mine who is a trailblazer and is, a historic figure in our community's political scene. Any of their supporters, I would like to say that I have an open door policy. I've always been like that on council. I've had success within, but partisan politics have no place in our city. It does not matter my registration. I'm a St. Petersburger first, and I'm going to continue that message until November.
St. Petersburger. That makes me hungry. Those two will campaign head-to-head for the next 2.5 months. Election day for St. Petersburg mayor and nearly all the city council seats is November 2nd. Meet the Press is next. Moderator Chuck Todd will speak with Secretary of State Antony Blinken, former National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster, and Dr. Anthony Fauci. Thanks so much for joining us here this morning, folks. We're here every Sunday morning at 9:30. I hope you have a wonderful Sunday.